Welcome to tonight's journey through the fascinating region of North China, a land where ancient civilizations first took root, and where the story of human history stretches back hundreds of thousands of years. As you settle in and allow your body to relax, let these gentle facts carry you through the night, painting pictures of vast plains, mighty rivers, towering mountains, and the remarkable people who have called this region home across the millennia. North China is a geographical region that encompasses 5 provincial-level administrative divisions, including the directly administered municipalities of Beijing and Tianjin, the provinces of Hebei and Shanxi, and the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. This vast territory lies north of the Kinling-Huhe line, with its heartland resting upon the Great North China Plain, one of the largest and most fertile alluvial plains on Earth. The region stretches across landscapes that vary from gentle rolling farmland to dramatic mountain ranges, from endless grasslands to ancient deserts, each contributing to the rich tapestry of cultures and histories that define this remarkable part of the world. The North China Plain itself covers an area of approximately 158,000 square miles, built up along the shore of the Yellow Sea by deposits from the Yellow River, the Huey River, the Hai River, and several other waterways that have shaped this land over millions of years. This plain is bordered to the north by the Yan Mountains, to the west by the Taihang Mountains and the Henan Highlands, and to the southwest by the Tongbai and Debi Mountains. From its northeastern edge to its southeastern boundary, the plain fronts the Bohai Gulf, the hills of the Shandong Peninsula, and the Yellow Sea, creating a region of extraordinary geographical diversity within a relatively compact area. Long before recorded history began, this region was home to some of humanity's earliest ancestors. At Zhaokudian, located approximately 42 kilometers southwest of modern Beijing, scientists have discovered fossil remains that paint a picture of human habitation stretching back an almost incomprehensible span of time. The site has yielded ancient human fossils, cultural remains, and animal fossils from 23 different localities within the property, dating from 5 million years ago to just 10,000 years ago. This remarkable concentration of prehistoric evidence makes Zhaokudian one of the most important paleontological sites anywhere in the world. The most famous discovery at Zhaokudian came on December 2, 1929, when Chinese paleoanthropologist Pei Wenzhang unearthed a nearly complete skull of what would come to be known as Peking Man. This Homo erectus specimen lived in the region between 700,000 and 230,000 years ago, representing one of the longest continuous occupations of any site by early human ancestors. The discovery revolutionized scientific understanding of human evolution and placed China at the center of paleontological research. Working in a 40-meter crevasse in frigid weather, with a hammer in one hand and a candle in the other, Pei made a discovery that would reshape our understanding of where humanity came from and how our ancestors spread across the globe. Over the years, excavations at Zhaokudian have uncovered the remains of approximately 40 individual early humans, along with more than 100,000 stone tools, and evidence suggesting that Peking Man may have used fire. The stone tools recovered from the site include simple choppers and flakes, as well as more sophisticated implements like scrapers, demonstrating that these early inhabitants possessed considerable technological capabilities. The site also yielded fossils of hundreds of animal species, providing a detailed picture of the ecosystem that supported these ancient human populations through countless generations. The Yellow River, known in Chinese as the Huanghe, has played a central role in the development of North China for as long as humans have inhabited this region. This mighty waterway stretches for approximately 5,464 kilometers, making it the second longest river in China and the 6th longest in the world. The river takes its name from the enormous quantities of fine yellow sediment it carries, giving its waters a distinctive golden hue that has inspired poets and artists for millennia. This sediment, known as less, is carried from the Les Plateau in the middle reaches of the river and deposited across the North China Plain, creating some of the most fertile agricultural land anywhere on Earth. The Yellow River Basin served as the birthplace of ancient Chinese civilization. According to traditional Chinese historiography, the legendary Xia dynasty originated along its banks around 2,100 years before the Common Era. The ancient historian Sima Qian recorded that the Xia were founded after tribes living around the Yellow River united to combat the frequent floods that threatened their communities. This cooperative effort to control the river's waters marked the beginning of organized Chinese society and established patterns of governance and water management that would persist for thousands of years. The river has quite literally shaped not only the physical landscape of North China, but the entire trajectory of Chinese civilization. Throughout recorded history, the Yellow River has been both a source of life and a cause of tremendous destruction. One estimate suggests that the river flooded approximately 1,593 times in the 2,540 years between 595 before the Common Era and 1946. These floods occurred because the river carries such enormous quantities of silt that its bed continuously rises, sometimes reaching heights above the surrounding countryside. When the river eventually breaks through its levees, the consequences can be catastrophic. The traditional Chinese response of building ever higher levees sometimes contributed to the severity of these floods, as water that broke through could no longer drain back into the riverbed. The 1887 Yellow River flood stands as one of the deadliest natural disasters in human history. When the river overcame its dikes in late September of that year, the flood spread across an estimated 50,000 square miles of the low-lying North China Plain, swamping agricultural settlements and commercial centers alike. Estimates of the death toll range from 900,000 to 2 million people, with 2 million additional survivors left homeless in the aftermath. The scale of this tragedy is almost impossible to comprehend, representing a loss of life that rivals the populations of entire modern cities. Beijing, the great capital of North China, has a history stretching back more than 3,000 years. The name Beijing means northern capital in Chinese, combining the characters for north and capital to distinguish this city from Nanjing, the southern capital. Prior to the unification of China by the first emperor in 221 before the Common Era, Beijing had been the capital of the ancient states of Jai and Yan for centuries. The area around present-day Beijing has been continuously inhabited since prehistoric times, with evidence of human settlement going back to the very dawn of Chinese civilization. The site where Beijing now stands emerged as an important strategic and political center during the earliest unified Chinese empires. The northern border of ancient China ran close to the present city, meaning that the area served as a crucial buffer zone between the settled agricultural communities of the Chinese heartland and the nomadic peoples who lived beyond the frontier. This position gave Beijing enormous military and commercial significance, making it a prize that successive dynasties fought to control. Control of Beijing meant control of access to the northern steppes, the trade routes that crossed into Central Asia, and the agricultural wealth of the North China Plain. Beijing's importance grew dramatically during the 10th through 13th centuries, when various nomadic peoples from beyond the Great Wall expanded southward and established their capitals in the region. The Khitan people founded the Liao dynasty and made the city one of their 4 secondary capitals, renaming it Nanjing, meaning southern capital, to distinguish it from their primary seat of power further north. Later, the Jurchen people conquered the Liao and established the Jin dynasty, making Beijing their capital under the name Zhangdu. These non-Han Chinese rulers recognized the strategic value of the city's location and invested heavily in its development. The transformation of Beijing into the capital of all China came under the Mongol ruler Kublai Khan, grandson of the legendary conqueror Genghis Khan. In 1267, Kublai Khan ordered the construction of a new capital called Dadu, meaning Great Capital, built slightly northeast of the old Jin dynasty city. This magnificent urban center became the political heart of the entire Chinese realm for the first time in history. The famous Venetian merchant Marco Polo visited Dadu during this period and left detailed descriptions of its splendor that captured the imagination of Europeans for centuries to come. Polo called the city Kambalu and marveled at its organization, its markets, and the sophistication of its inhabitants. From 1279 onward, with only 2 interruptions, Beijing has remained China's capital, serving as the seat of power for the Ming Dynasty, the Qing Dynasty, the early Republic of China, and now the People's Republic of China. This continuity of political importance spanning more than 7 centuries is remarkable in the history of world capitals. The city has witnessed invasions and rebellions, the rise and fall of dynasties, foreign occupation and liberation, revolutionary transformation, and peaceful development. Through all these changes, Beijing has maintained its position at the heart of Chinese political life. The Forbidden City, located at the very center of Beijing, represents one of the most magnificent architectural achievements in human history. Construction of this vast palace complex began in 1406 under the Yongle Emperor of the Ming Dynasty and was completed 14 years later in 1420. The project required the labor of more than 1 million workers, including over 100,000 skilled craftsmen who dedicated years of their lives to creating this monument to imperial power. The palace served as the home of 24 emperors spanning 2 dynasties and remained the ceremonial and political center of the Chinese government for more than 500 years. The Forbidden City earned its name because access to this sacred precinct was strictly controlled. Ordinary subjects of the realm were absolutely forbidden from entering, and even government officials and members of the imperial family were permitted only limited access to specific areas. The emperor alone could enter any section at will, moving through the vast complex as the undisputed master of all he surveyed. This exclusivity reinforced the mystique of imperial power and created a clear separation between the ruler and those he governed. The palace was not merely a residence, but a symbol of cosmic order, with its design reflecting deeply held beliefs about the relationship between heaven, earth, and humanity. The Forbidden City covers an area of approximately 72 hectares, or about 178 acres, making it the largest palace complex in the world. The rectangular enclosure measures 961 meters in length and 753 meters in width, surrounded by walls 10 meters high and a moat 52 meters wide. Within these protective barriers stand more than 900 buildings containing approximately 9,000 rooms, organized according to principles of Feng Shui and traditional Chinese philosophy. The entire layout follows a precise north-south axis, with all major structures facing south to honor the sun and demonstrate the emperor's connection to cosmic forces. The construction materials used in the Forbidden City came from across the Chinese Empire. Whole logs of precious Phoebe Genin wood were transported from the jungles of southwestern China, a journey that could take up to 4 years. Massive blocks of marble were quarried near Beijing and transported to the construction site over ice roads during the dead of winter. The floors of the major halls were paved with specially baked bricks from Suzhou, known as golden bricks because of their exceptional quality and the golden sheen they developed over time. These materials were assembled by master craftsmen whose techniques had been refined over countless generations, creating structures that have withstood earthquakes, fires, and the passage of centuries. The architecture of the Forbidden City follows strict principles of hierarchy and symbolism. The relative importance of each building can be determined not only by its size and position, but by subtle architectural details such as the style of its roof and the number of figurines perched along its ridges. The most important halls feature the double-eaved hip roof design reserved exclusively for the most sacred structures, while lesser buildings display progressively simpler roof styles. These visual cues allowed visitors to immediately understand where they stood within the imperial hierarchy and to behave accordingly. The Great Wall of China, perhaps the most famous structure in all of North China, represents one of the most ambitious building projects ever undertaken by any civilization. The total length of all sections of the Great Wall ever constructed adds up to approximately 21,196 kilometers, though the wall built during the Ming Dynasty, which represents the most well-preserved sections visible today, stretches for about 8,850 kilometers. Construction of the earliest defensive walls that would eventually become part of the Great Wall system began during the 7th century before the Common Era, meaning that work on these fortifications continued over a span of more than 2,000 years. The Great Wall developed from the disparate border fortifications built by individual Chinese kingdoms during the Warring States period. For several centuries, these kingdoms were as concerned with protection from their near neighbors as they were with the threat of nomadic invasions from the north. The first emperor of unified China, Qin Shi Huang, ordered that these earlier fortifications be joined together into a single defensive system extending for more than 10,000 li, a Chinese unit of measurement roughly equivalent to 1/3 of a mile. The famous general Meng Tian was initially charged with directing this massive project, which employed an enormous labor force of soldiers, convicts, and conscripted commoners. The construction methods used for the Great Wall varied dramatically depending on the local terrain and available materials. In mountainous areas, builders used locally quarried stone, while in the plains, they relied primarily on rammed earth. Before the widespread use of bricks during the Ming Dynasty, most sections consisted of compacted soil reinforced with whatever materials came to hand. The Ming period transformation of the wall into the impressive stone and brick structure familiar from photographs required the development of new construction techniques and the mobilization of enormous resources. The size and weight of bricks made them easier to work with than earth and stone, allowing construction to proceed more quickly and creating a more durable final product. Communication along the length of the Great Wall was essential for its defensive function. Signal towers were built upon hilltops and other high points along the wall for maximum visibility, allowing messages to be transmitted rapidly across vast distances using fire and smoke signals. Garrisons stationed at regular intervals could quickly learn of enemy movements and call for reinforcements when necessary. Barracks, stables, and armories were built near the wall's inner surface to support the soldiers charged with defending this immense frontier. The wall was not merely a barrier, but a comprehensive military system designed to protect the Chinese heartland from invasion. The Taihang Mountains form the western boundary of the North China Plain, separating this fertile lowland from the Shanxi Plateau beyond. This dramatic mountain range runs roughly north to south for approximately 400 kilometers, with peaks rising to heights of more than 3,000 meters. The mountains have served as a natural defensive barrier throughout Chinese history, with passes through the range serving as vital strategic choke points that controlling powers fought to hold. The rugged terrain and steep valleys of the Taihang created distinct cultural and economic zones on either side, contributing to the development of regional identities that persist to this day. Shanxi Province, located to the west of the Taihang Mountains, represents one of the most important cradles of Chinese civilization. The province contains more than 28,000 registered ancient buildings, representing approximately 10.85% of all ancient buildings in China, and ranking first among all Chinese provinces in this category. The number of ancient wooden buildings in Shanxi is particularly remarkable, with structures from the Song and Jin dynasties alone accounting for more than 75% of all surviving ancient wooden buildings from these periods anywhere in the country. Shanxi's extraordinary concentration of historic architecture reflects its long and complex history as a center of political, economic, and religious life. Buddhism first prospered in China during the Wei period, and it was from Shanxi that the Chinese Buddhist monk Faxian began his legendary journey to India in search of sacred texts. The Buddhist cave sculptures dating from this period and preserved at Yungang today constitute some of China's most precious artistic treasures. These caves contain thousands of carved Buddha images ranging in size from a few centimeters to more than 17 meters tall, representing one of the greatest achievements of Chinese Buddhist art. Shanxi is also China's major coal-producing region, containing approximately 17.3% of the nation's total coal reserves. The province sits atop deposits estimated at more than 200 billion tons, earning it the nickname the Sea of Coal in China. Coal mining has shaped the modern economy of Shanxi, just as agriculture and trade shaped its ancient prosperity. However, this industrial development has not erased the province's historical character, and visitors can still explore ancient temples, merchant courtyards, and fortified villages that transport them back to earlier centuries. The city of Taiyuan, capital of Shanxi Province, has a history stretching back more than 2,500 years. The ancient city of Jinyang, which stood on this site, served as a crucial military stronghold for over 1,400 years before evolving into the modern city we know today. Taiyuan transformed from a strategic fortress into one of China's major industrial centers during the 20th century, particularly during the coal boom that brought economic development, but also significant environmental challenges. Despite these changes, the city preserves important cultural sites, including the Jin Memorial Hall, a temple complex originally built in the 5th century that remains one of Shanxi's best-known attractions. Hebei Province surrounds both Beijing and Tianjin, playing a crucial supporting role for these great cities while maintaining its own distinct identity and historical significance. The name Hebei means north of the river, referring to the province's location north of the Yellow River. Before the modern province was created in 1928, this region was known as Zhili, meaning directly ruled, because its proximity to the imperial capital meant it was administered directly by the emperor rather than through normal provincial structures. The history of Hebei stretches back to the very dawn of Chinese civilization. Peking Man, the famous Homo erectus, whose remains were discovered at Zhaokudian, lived in what is now Hebei approximately 700,000 years ago. Neolithic findings at the prehistoric Beifuti site date to between 7,000 and 8,000 years before the Common Era, demonstrating continuous human habitation spanning an almost unimaginable length of time. Many of the earliest Chinese myths are set in this province, and legendary figures including Fuxi, one of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, are said to have lived in present-day Hebei. During the Spring and Autumn and Warring States periods, from approximately 771 to 226 before the Common Era, Hebei was ruled by the powerful states of Yan and Zhao. These ancient kingdoms left such a lasting impression on the region that Hebei is still sometimes called by the nickname Yanzhou, combining the names of both states. The martial traditions and cultural patterns established during this period continued to influence the region for centuries afterward, contributing to Hebei's reputation as a land of warriors and strategists. 5 UNESCO World Heritage Sites can be found within Hebei Province, including sections of the Great Wall, the Chengde Mountain Resort, portions of the Grand Canal, and the Eastern and Western Qing Dynasty tombs. The province also contains 5 cities designated as national famous historical and cultural cities, including Handan, Beiyading, Chengde, Zhengding, and Shanhaiguan. This concentration of cultural heritage reflects Hebei's central role in Chinese history as the gateway to the capital and the battleground where northern and southern, eastern and western influences met and mingled. The Chengde Mountain Resort, located approximately 250 kilometers northeast of Beijing, served as the summer retreat for Qing dynasty emperors beginning in the early 18th century. This vast complex eventually grew to be even larger than the imperial palaces in Beijing, covering an area of about 564 hectares. The resort contains replicas of famous buildings from across the Chinese Empire and beyond, including a reproduction of the Potala Palace from Lhasa, demonstrating the Qing rulers' desire to present themselves as universal monarchs ruling over a diverse realm. The emperors spent summer months here engaging in outdoor pursuits, such as hunting, which reminded the Manchu rulers of their origins as herdsmen of the northern plains. Tianjin, located at the northeastern extremity of the North China Plain, approximately 120 kilometers southeast of Beijing, has served as an important transport and trading center since the Yuan dynasty in the 13th century. The city's name means heavenly ford, reflecting its position as a crucial crossing point for travelers and goods moving between the capital and the sea. By the beginning of the Qing dynasty in the 17th century, Tianjin had become the leading economic center of North China because of its location at the northern terminus of the Grand Canal, the great artificial waterway that connected the capital with the rice-producing regions of southern China. The modern port of Tianjin is the largest port in northern China and one of the largest in the world, handling approximately 500 million tons of cargo annually. The port covers 121 square kilometers of land surface, with more than 31 kilometers of quay shoreline and over 150 production berths. This massive facility trades with more than 600 ports around the world, serving as the maritime gateway to Beijing and the entire North China region. The port's history stretches back to the Han Dynasty, more than 2,000 years ago, though it only emerged as a major international trading center during the 19th century. Inner Mongolia, the northernmost portion of North China, stretches in a great arc across the top of the country, forming a border region between the agricultural civilization of China proper and the pastoral nomadic cultures of the Mongolian steppes. Covering an area of approximately 1.18 million square kilometers, Inner Mongolia is the third largest province-level administrative division in China, exceeded only by Tibet and Xinjiang. The region stretches more than 2,500 kilometers from east to west, making it the widest administrative division in the entire country. The vast grasslands of Inner Mongolia have long served as the defining symbol of this region. Mongolian art frequently depicts these grasslands in an uplifting fashion, emphasizing the nomadic traditions that have characterized life in this region for thousands of years. Rock paintings found at locations including Helanshan, Yinshan, and Zhenzishan demonstrate that nomadic herding has been practiced in this region for more than 3,000 years. The traditional lifestyle centered on raising the 5 domestic animals, namely cattle, horses, goats, sheep, and camels, moving with the seasons to find fresh pasture and water for the herds. The nomadic peoples who inhabited the grasslands of Inner Mongolia played a crucial role in shaping Chinese history. The area served as a buffer zone and frequent battleground between settled agricultural communities to the south and pastoral nomads to the north. In 658 before the Common Era, several states of the North China Plain combined their efforts to build a defensive wall against nomadic incursions, representing one of the earliest examples of the fortification projects that would eventually evolve into the Great Wall. Throughout subsequent centuries, waves of nomadic invaders including the Xiongnu, Xianbei, Khitan, Jurchen, and Mongols periodically swept down from the steppes to challenge and sometimes overthrow Chinese dynasties. The establishment of the Mongolian Empire by Genghis Khan in the 13th century brought unprecedented prestige and expanded trade to Inner Mongolia. The empire created by Genghis Khan and his successors eventually stretched from Korea to Eastern Europe, becoming the largest contiguous land empire in human history. Genghis Khan himself initiated important environmental protection measures, with his legal code prohibiting the killing of young, pregnant, and old wild animals during hunting. These conservation principles became deeply embedded in Mongolian customary law and were passed down through generations of herders. Traditional Mongolian dwellings, known as jur in Mongolian or yurt in Turkish-derived languages, represent a remarkable adaptation to nomadic life on the steppes. These portable round tents can be easily assembled and disassembled as herders move across the plains following their animals. A traditional jur consists of a lattice framework of wooden pieces supporting a domed roof covered with felt or skins. The interior is organized according to strict traditional principles, with the door always facing south and different areas designated for specific activities and family members. Despite the introduction of modern housing, many Inner Mongolian herders continue to use jur as their primary dwellings. The Naadam Fair represents one of the most important traditional celebrations in Inner Mongolian culture. The word Naadam means entertainment or game in Mongolian, and the fair originated approximately 700 years ago as a way to celebrate successful harvests and provide recreation for herding communities. The fair traditionally features 3 main competitions known as the 3 manly sports: horse racing, wrestling, and archery. Held during the summer months, typically in July or August, the Naadam Fair attracts participants and spectators from across the region, keeping alive traditions that stretch back to the era of Genghis Khan and beyond. The cuisine of North China differs dramatically from that of southern China, reflecting the distinct agricultural conditions and cultural traditions of the region. While southern China is famous for rice cultivation, the climate of North China is generally too cold and dry to support wet rice agriculture. Instead, wheat has served as the primary staple crop, giving rise to a distinctive culinary tradition centered on noodles, dumplings, steamed buns, and pancakes. These wheat-based foods provide the substantial calories needed to sustain people through the harsh northern winters. Dumplings hold a particularly important place in northern Chinese food culture. Known as jiaozi in Mandarin, these small packages of seasoned filling wrapped in thin wheat dough are associated with family gatherings and holiday celebrations throughout the region. The tradition of eating dumplings during Chinese New Year dates back centuries, with the shape of the dumplings said to resemble ancient Chinese gold ingots, symbolizing wishes for prosperity in the coming year. Making dumplings is often a communal activity, with family members gathering to prepare hundreds of dumplings that will be eaten over several days of celebration. Hand-pulled noodles, known as lamian, represent another distinctive contribution of North China to Chinese cuisine. Creating these noodles requires remarkable skill, as the noodle maker repeatedly stretches and folds a piece of dough until it has been transformed into dozens or even hundreds of thin strands. The technique originated in the northwestern regions of China and spread throughout the north, with regional variations developing in different areas. The Japanese word ramen derives from lamian, reflecting the historical connections between Chinese and Japanese culinary traditions. Northern Chinese cuisine tends to favor bold, savory flavors based on ingredients such as soy sauce, garlic, scallions, bean sauces, sesame oil, and various vinegars. The cooking methods most commonly used in the north include stewing, braising, and sautéing, producing hearty dishes well suited to the cold climate. Large portions are characteristic of northern food, reflecting both the caloric needs of people living in cold conditions and the generous, hospitable nature traditionally attributed to northerners. Visitors to the region are often struck by the abundance of food served at even casual meals. Beijing duck, perhaps the most internationally famous dish from North China, represents the pinnacle of the region's culinary traditions. This elaborate preparation involves specially bred ducks that are air-dried, coated with a maltose syrup, and roasted in special ovens until the skin becomes impossibly crisp while the meat remains tender and flavorful. The dish is traditionally served with thin pancakes, scallions, cucumber, and a sweet bean sauce, with the diner wrapping small portions of duck in the pancakes to create individual bites. The preparation of Beijing duck requires considerable skill and has been refined over centuries in the imperial kitchens and later in famous Beijing restaurants. The Grand Canal, portions of which pass through North China, represents one of the greatest engineering achievements in human history. This artificial waterway connected the northern and southern halves of China, allowing grain and other goods to be transported from the productive agricultural regions of the Yangtze River Valley to the capital in the north. Construction of the canal began during the Sui dynasty in the 6th century and continued through subsequent dynasties, eventually creating a system that stretched for approximately 1,800 kilometers. The canal transformed Chinese commerce and helped unify a vast empire by facilitating the movement of goods, people, and ideas across enormous distances. The section of the Grand Canal passing through North China became particularly important after the Ming Dynasty moved the capital from Nanjing to Beijing in 1421. The massive needs of the capital city, including food for its enormous population and materials for ongoing construction projects, required a reliable transportation system capable of moving huge quantities of goods. At its peak, the canal carried millions of shi, a traditional Chinese unit of measurement, of grain northward each year. The management of this vital artery required a sophisticated bureaucracy and engineering corps, contributing to the development of Chinese administrative techniques. The climate of North China shows pronounced continental characteristics, with sharp temperature differences between seasons and relatively low precipitation. Winters are cold and dry, with average January temperatures falling well below freezing across much of the region. Summers bring hot and humid conditions as moist air masses move in from the Pacific Ocean, delivering the majority of the region's annual rainfall during a few intense months. This seasonal pattern of precipitation creates challenges for agriculture, as farmers must make the most of limited water resources while protecting their crops from both drought and flood. The Les Plateau, located in the middle reaches of the Yellow River Basin, represents one of the most distinctive geological features of North China. This vast expanse of wind-deposited sediment, known as loess, accumulated to depths exceeding 1,000 meters in some locations over millions of years. The loess is rich in calcium and therefore quite fertile, but the overall aridity of the region, combined with the fact that loess does not hold water well, makes traditional irrigation methods ineffective. Farmers in this challenging environment developed techniques adapted to local conditions, though the highly variable rainfall meant that they rarely expected to harvest more than 2 crops in every 3 years. The Gobi Desert stretches across the northern portions of Inner Mongolia, creating a natural barrier that has shaped the movement of peoples and goods throughout history. This vast desert, one of the largest in the world, features extreme temperature variations, with summer temperatures that can exceed 40 degrees Celsius and winter temperatures that plunge far below freezing. Despite its harsh conditions, the Gobi has never been completely impassable, and trade routes including sections of the Silk Road crossed its expanse, connecting China with Central Asia and beyond. The millet grains Panicum millesicum and Setaria italica are believed to be indigenous to North China, representing some of the earliest domesticated crops in the region. Archaeological evidence from sites including Kishan in Hebei province suggests that millet cultivation in North China dates back at least 8,500 years, making it one of the oldest centers of agricultural development anywhere in the world. The transition from hunting and gathering to agriculture transformed human society in profound ways, allowing population growth, permanent settlements, and the development of complex civilizations. The Yan Mountains form the northern rim of the North China Plain, displaying an endless sea of rounded hills with peaks averaging approximately 1,500 meters above sea level. The Great Wall zigzags along the crests of these mountains, taking advantage of the natural defensive terrain to create an even more formidable barrier against invasion. Beyond the Yan Mountains, the Mongolian Plateau stretches northward, a vast upland region with very different climate and ecology from the lowlands to the south. This transition zone between mountain and plateau has served as a cultural boundary for millennia, marking the edge of agricultural China and the beginning of the pastoral steppe. The Hai River system drains much of the North China Plain, with 5 principal tributaries converging near Tianjin before flowing to the sea as the Hai River proper. This river system has played a crucial role in the development of the region, providing water for agriculture, transportation routes for commerce, and unfortunately also bringing devastating floods when the rivers overflow their banks. Throughout most of recorded history, widespread flooding occurred approximately 2 years out of every 3 on the plain. After 1949, large-scale projects for flood control and irrigation were constructed, dramatically reducing the frequency and severity of floods. The Eastern Qing tombs, located in Hebei province approximately 125 kilometers east of Beijing, contain the remains of 5 emperors, 15 empresses, and numerous other members of the imperial family from the Qing dynasty. This vast necropolis covers an area of approximately 2,500 square kilometers, making it the largest and most complete surviving imperial tomb complex in China. The tombs were constructed according to strict principles of Feng Shui, with mountains behind to block evil influences from the north and watercourses in front to carry away negative energy. The Western Qing tombs, located approximately 140 kilometers southwest of Beijing, complement the Eastern tombs as the final resting places of Qing dynasty rulers. 4 emperors are buried at this site, along with numerous empresses, princes, and princesses. The division of imperial burials between Eastern and Western sites followed a pattern established by the Kangxi and Yangzheng emperors and continued through subsequent reigns. Like the Eastern tombs, the Western tombs are surrounded by mountains and protected by elaborate ritual structures designed to ensure the eternal comfort and prosperity of the deceased emperors. The Shanhaiguan Pass, located where the Great Wall meets the sea, represents one of the most strategically important locations in all of North China. This pass controlled access between the North China Plain and the lands of Manchuria to the northeast, making it a prize that successive dynasties and invaders fought to control. The pass is sometimes called the first pass under heaven, reflecting its legendary importance in Chinese military history. When rebel forces captured Beijing in 1644 and the last Ming emperor hanged himself, the Ming general Wu Sangui made the fateful decision to open Shanhaiguan to Manchu forces, enabling them to sweep into China and establish the Qing dynasty. The Zhejiu Bridge, located in Hebei province, is one of the oldest standing stone arch bridges in the world. Constructed during the Sui dynasty around 605 to 617 of the Common Era, the bridge has survived more than 1,400 years of use and natural disasters. The design incorporates open spandrels that reduce the weight of the structure while allowing floodwaters to pass through, demonstrating remarkable engineering sophistication for its time. The bridge has served as inspiration for bridge builders throughout Asia and remains a testament to the technical achievements of ancient Chinese engineers. The Temple of Heaven in Beijing, though primarily associated with the religious ceremonies of the imperial court, reflects the same cosmological principles that shaped all aspects of North Chinese civilization. The emperor visited this sacred complex twice annually to perform sacrifices and prayers, ensuring good harvests and cosmic harmony. The circular buildings and square enclosures embody the traditional Chinese conception of heaven as round and earth as square, with the emperor serving as the intermediary between these cosmic realms. The acoustics of certain structures within the complex were designed to allow whispered prayers to be heard clearly across considerable distances, adding to the mystical atmosphere of the ritual space. The Summer Palace, located in the northwestern suburbs of Beijing, represents the pinnacle of Chinese garden design. Originally constructed in the 18th century and later restored after being damaged by foreign troops, the palace complex covers an area of approximately 290 hectares, 3/4 of which is covered by Kunming Lake. The gardens incorporate traditional Chinese landscape design principles, creating an idealized natural environment that provided the imperial family with a retreat from the formality of the Forbidden City. Pavilions, temples, bridges, and covered walkways dot the landscape, each positioned to create perfect views across the lake and gardens. The development of iron tools and the spread of iron plowing technology during the 4th century before the Common Era marked a turning point in the agricultural history of North China. Iron plows allowed farmers to work harder soils and bring new lands under cultivation, dramatically increasing agricultural productivity. This technological revolution coincided with the construction of the first comprehensive levee systems along the lower Yellow River, initiating changes that would shape the region's ecology and economy for millennia to come. The increased food production supported population growth and the development of larger, more complex states. The cave-dwelling tradition of North China represents a distinctive architectural response to the region's unique geology and climate. In areas of the Les Plateau, where thick deposits of wind-blown sediment accumulated over millions of years, people carved homes directly into hillsides or dug down from the surface to create underground courtyards surrounded by cave rooms. These dwellings maintain relatively constant temperatures year-round, staying cool during hot summers and warm during cold winters without any need for heating or cooling systems. Estimates suggest that at their peak, cave dwellings may have housed as much as 1/4 of Shanxi's population. The Jin dialect, spoken primarily in Shanxi province and parts of surrounding areas, represents the only major Chinese variety in northern China that is not classified within the Mandarin group. This linguistic distinctiveness reflects the relative isolation of Shanxi behind the Taihang Mountains and the region's long history as a semi-autonomous cultural zone. The Jin dialect preserves features of older Chinese that have been lost in standard Mandarin, providing linguists with valuable evidence about the historical development of the Chinese language family. The tradition of Shanxi banking emerged during the Ming Dynasty and reached its peak during the Qing period, when Shanxi merchants controlled much of China's interprovincial trade and financial services. These merchants, known as Jinshang, developed sophisticated systems for transferring funds across vast distances without physically moving silver, effectively inventing the draft or check system. The headquarters of these banking operations were concentrated in the town of Pingyao, which preserves its Ming Dynasty city walls and streetscape as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Yungang Grottoes near Datong in Shanxi Province contain some of the finest examples of early Chinese Buddhist sculpture. Carved primarily during the 5th and 6th centuries under the patronage of the Northern Wei dynasty, the caves contain more than 50,000 stone Buddha images distributed across more than 200 caves and niches. The earliest sculptures show strong influences from Central Asian and Indian Buddhist art, while later works demonstrate the gradual development of a distinctively Chinese style. The caves were designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2001 in recognition of their exceptional artistic and cultural value. The Hanging Temple, also known as Xuankangxi, clings to a cliff face on Mount Heng in Shanxi Province, appearing to defy gravity as it juts out over a deep valley. Built during the Northern Wei dynasty in the 6th century, the temple complex incorporates elements of Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism, reflecting a philosophy of religious harmony that characterized certain periods of Chinese history. The structures are supported by wooden beams inserted into holes drilled into the rock face, a construction technique that has proven remarkably durable over more than 1,500 years. The Hukou Waterfall, located on the Yellow River at the border between Shanxi and Shanxi provinces, is the second largest waterfall in China and the largest yellow waterfall in the world. The river narrows dramatically at this point, dropping approximately 50 meters into a gorge and creating a spectacular display of churning golden water. The name Hukou means kettle spout, describing the shape of the channel through which the water pours. The sound of the falls can be heard from considerable distances, and the mist rising from the crashing water creates rainbows when the sun shines at the right angle. The Wutai Mountains in Shanxi Province are one of the 4 sacred mountains of Chinese Buddhism, associated with the Bodhisattva Manjusri, who represents wisdom. The mountain complex contains numerous temples dating from various periods of Chinese history, some of which preserve architectural features that have disappeared from other regions. The Faguang Temple, located on the mountains, contains structures dating to the Tang Dynasty that represent some of the oldest wooden buildings still standing anywhere in China. Pilgrims have traveled to Wutai for more than 1,000 years, seeking spiritual merit through worship at the sacred sites. The Tangshan earthquake of July 28, 1976, ranks as one of the deadliest earthquakes in recorded history. This magnitude 7.5 tremor struck in the early morning hours when most residents were asleep, causing widespread collapse of buildings throughout the city. Official estimates place the death toll at approximately 242,000, though some estimates suggest the actual number may have been considerably higher. The earthquake also affected Beijing, where tens of thousands of residents camped out in Tiananmen Square for 2 months afterward, fearing aftershocks that might bring down damaged buildings. The Bohai Sea, which borders the eastern coast of North China, is a shallow semi-enclosed body of water with an average depth of only about 30 meters. The sea is fed by several major rivers including the Yellow River, the Hai River, and the Luan River, which deposit sediment that continuously builds up the coastline. The shallow waters and nutrient-rich runoff support abundant marine life, making the Bohai an important fishing ground despite concerns about pollution from industrial development along its shores. Winter ice forms along portions of the coast, but is generally not thick enough to prevent navigation with icebreakers. The port of Qinhuangdao, located on the Bohai coast of Hebei Province, serves as one of northern China's most important ice-free harbors. The port handles enormous quantities of coal from the mines of Shanxi and Inner Mongolia, transporting fuel to power the factories and cities of coastal China and beyond. The city also serves as a popular summer resort destination, with beaches that attract visitors from Beijing and other inland cities seeking relief from the summer heat. The name Qinhuangdao means the island of the Qin Emperor, referring to a legend that the first emperor of unified China visited this location during his search for the elixir of immortality. The production of iron and steel has been central to the economy of North China since the communist period transformed the region into an industrial powerhouse. Hebei Province alone is China's premier steel producer, with major production centers at Tangshan, Handan, and other cities drawing on local iron ore and coal resources. This industrial development has brought economic growth, but also serious environmental challenges, including air pollution that affects residents across the region. In recent years, government efforts to reduce pollution have led to the closure or upgrading of some of the most polluting facilities. The tradition of Chinese opera developed distinctive regional forms in North China, including Shanxi opera, known locally as Jin opera, which remains popular among the Han Chinese population of the region. This style of performance features bold, high-pitched singing and energetic physical movement, accompanied by traditional instruments including the banhu, a type of spike fiddle, and the bangzi, wooden clappers that give Bangzi opera its name. Performances traditionally told stories drawn from Chinese history and legend, transmitting cultural values and historical memories from generation to generation. The Mengshan Grand Buddha near Taiyuan in Shanxi Province is one of the largest stone Buddha statues in China, standing approximately 17 meters tall. The statue dates to the Northern Qi dynasty in the 6th century, though it was lost for centuries and only rediscovered in 1980. The Buddha's body was carved directly into the rock of the mountainside, and subsequent construction added a temple complex surrounding the site. The rediscovery of this monument added to understanding of the flourishing of Buddhist art and architecture during the centuries following Buddhism's introduction to China. The Kailuan coal mine in Tangshan, Hebei Province, is one of China's oldest modern coal mines, with a history stretching back to the late 19th century. The mine was opened with foreign technical assistance during the period of Chinese modernization under the Qing dynasty and has remained in continuous operation for well over a century. Annual production exceeds 20 million metric tons, supplying fuel for industry and power generation across northern China. The mine's long history provides a window into the transformation of Chinese industry from traditional methods to modern mechanized production. The region around Beijing and Hebei has long been known for persimmon cultivation, with the sweet orange fruits ripening each autumn to brighten the harvest season. The persimmons grow particularly well in the hilly areas surrounding the capital, where the combination of soil and climate produces fruit of exceptional quality. Dried persimmons, prepared by peeling and sun drying the fruit until it develops a natural white coating of crystallized sugar, represent a traditional preserved food that could be stored through the long winter months. The Jiangding area of Hebei Province contains an exceptional concentration of historic temples and pagodas that have survived the vicissitudes of Chinese history. The Longxing Temple, also called the Big Buddha Temple, was founded in 586 during the Sui dynasty and contains a remarkable 22-meter tall bronze statue of a Guanyin, the Buddhist goddess of mercy with 42 arms. The Tianning Temple features an octagonal pagoda from the Tang dynasty, while the Kaiyuan Temple preserves structures dating to the 6th century despite damage during the Cultural Revolution. The Baiyangdian Lake, located in Hebei Province, is the largest freshwater lake in North China. This extensive wetland system covers an area of approximately 366 square kilometers and includes 143 interconnected lakes and pools. The lake has served as an important resource for fishing and duck raising for centuries, and its reed beds provide habitat for diverse bird species. During the resistance against Japanese occupation in World War II, the lake's complex waterways and reed-covered islands sheltered guerrilla fighters who became legendary for their exploits. The North China oil field, discovered in the 1960s, represents one of China's major petroleum resources. Oil deposits are found across portions of Hebei, Henan, and Shandong provinces, supporting a substantial petrochemical industry. The development of these oil resources contributed to China's growing energy independence during the later decades of the 20th century, reducing reliance on imported petroleum. Production techniques have evolved over the years as easier-to-access reserves were depleted and more sophisticated methods became necessary to extract remaining oil. The traditional courtyard house, known as Sihayuan in Mandarin, represents the characteristic domestic architecture of North China's urban areas. These houses are organized around a central courtyard, with the main hall facing south to capture sunlight, and the service areas and secondary buildings arranged around the sides and back. Walls surrounding the compound create private space, shielded from the public street, while the internal courtyard provides light and air while maintaining seclusion. The arrangement of rooms reflects traditional family hierarchies, with the most senior generations occupying the main south-facing hall. The development of the Jing-Jin-Jai urban cluster, centered on Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei, represents one of the most significant regional development initiatives in modern China. This integrated economic zone covers approximately 216,000 square kilometers and is home to more than 110 million people. The coordinated development strategy aims to reduce congestion in Beijing by distributing functions across the wider region, improving transportation links, and addressing environmental challenges through regional cooperation. The project demonstrates the continuing importance of North China as the political and economic heart of the Chinese nation. The wheat harvest in North China typically occurs in late May and June, as farmers gather the crop that has grown through the cool months of autumn, winter, and spring. This harvest festival has been celebrated since ancient times, with special foods prepared from the newly gathered grain. The tradition of eating dumplings on the first day of the hottest period of summer marks the beginning of the harvest, when freshly milled wheat flour could be made into the region's characteristic foods. These agricultural rhythms have shaped the culture and cuisine of North China for thousands of years. The spring dust storms that sweep across North China each year originate in the deserts and dry grasslands to the northwest, carrying fine particles of soil and sand across enormous distances. These storms can reduce visibility to near zero and deposit layers of yellow dust on every surface. In recent decades, concerns about desertification have led to massive tree planting programs aimed at creating green barriers to reduce the severity of dust storms. The phenomenon serves as a reminder of the continuing influence of Inner Asia on the densely populated regions to the southeast. The transmission of imperial examinations through the traditional education system shaped the culture of North China for centuries. The competitive examination system selected officials based on demonstrated knowledge of classical texts and literary skill rather than family connections, creating opportunities for social mobility while reinforcing Confucian values. Successful examination candidates achieved positions of power and prestige, motivating families across the region to invest heavily in their sons' educations. The Confucian temples found in cities throughout North China served as centers for worship of Confucius and celebration of examination success. The folk paper cutting tradition of North China represents a distinctive artistic form that developed over centuries as women created decorations for homes and celebrations. These intricate designs, cut from red or multicolored paper using scissors or knives, typically feature auspicious symbols, animals, flowers, and scenes from daily life. The art form has been particularly well preserved in Hebei province, where skilled practitioners continue to create elaborate works while also teaching younger generations. Paper cuttings traditionally decorated windows, doors, and walls during festivals, bringing color and blessings to homes throughout the region. The making of vinegar, particularly the aged vinegar of Kingsu in Shanxi province, represents a traditional craft that has been practiced for centuries. Shanxi vinegar is made from sorghum and other grains through a lengthy fermentation and aging process that can extend for years. The resulting product has a complex, mellow flavor, quite different from vinegars made by faster industrial processes. Aged Shanxi vinegar is considered one of the finest vinegars in Chinese cuisine and appears in dishes throughout the region, adding depth and brightness to both cooking and table use. The tradition of making fenju, a sorghum-based liquor from Xinghua in Shanxi province, dates back more than 1,500 years. This clear spirit has a clean, slightly sweet flavor that distinguishes it from the more strongly flavored baijiu produced in other regions. The liquor takes its name from the Fen River that flows through the region, whose waters were traditionally used in the production process. Fenju has received numerous awards for quality and represents an important cultural heritage product of North China. The making of traditional Chinese paper, one of the four great inventions of ancient China, developed significantly in the regions of North China. Paper production required access to plant fibers, clear water, and skilled craftsmen who understood the delicate processes of pulping, screening, and drying. The invention of paper revolutionized communication and record keeping, allowing ideas to be preserved and transmitted across vast distances and through countless generations. Before paper, writing materials were limited to expensive silk or bulky bamboo strips, restricting literacy to small elites. The spread of paper making democratized knowledge and made possible the vast literary and historical records that document North Chinese civilization. The tradition of brick making in North China reaches back thousands of years, with ancient techniques continuing to influence construction practices today. The golden bricks used in the Forbidden City were made through a process involving careful selection of clay, multiple firings, and extended polishing that could take years to complete. These extraordinary bricks produced a ringing sound when struck, indicating their exceptional density and quality. The production center for these imperial bricks was located in Suzhou, but their destination was always the great palaces and temples of the north, where they paved floors that emperors walked upon. The martial arts traditions of North China developed over centuries of warfare and have been preserved through lineages of masters passing their knowledge to selected students. Northern styles of kung fu tend to emphasize long-range kicks and extended arm movements, reflecting the spacious plains where these techniques evolved. The legendary Shaolin Temple, though located in Henan Province just south of the traditional North China boundary, influenced martial arts throughout the northern regions. These fighting traditions became intertwined with health practices and philosophical teachings, creating comprehensive systems for physical and spiritual development. The astronomical observations made at the Beijing Ancient Observatory demonstrate the sophisticated scientific knowledge that developed in North China over centuries. This observatory, established during the Ming Dynasty and expanded under the Qing, contains bronze instruments created during the 17th and 18th centuries with the assistance of Jesuit missionaries. These remarkable devices tracked the movements of celestial bodies with impressive accuracy, supporting the creation of calendars essential for agricultural planning and the ritual observances of the imperial court. The observatory stands today as a monument to the international exchange of scientific knowledge. The Hutong neighborhoods of Beijing preserve the traditional urban fabric that characterized Chinese cities for centuries before modern development transformed the landscape. These narrow alleyways wind between traditional courtyard houses, creating intimate communities where neighbors lived in close proximity and shared common spaces. The word hutong derives from a Mongolian term meaning water well, reflecting the importance of water access in determining settlement patterns. Although many hutong have been demolished to make way for modern construction, preservation efforts have saved some neighborhoods, allowing visitors to experience something of old Beijing's atmosphere. The ceramic traditions of North China, though perhaps less famous than the porcelains of the South, produced distinctive wares valued for their strength and simplicity. The kilns of Hebei and Shanxi provinces created robust stoneware and sturdy everyday vessels that served the needs of northern households for generations. The production of ceramic tiles for imperial construction represented a particularly important craft, with kilns near Beijing supplying the yellow glazed tiles that covered the roofs of the Forbidden City and other imperial structures. The golden color of these tiles was reserved by law for imperial use, making roof color a visible marker of hierarchy throughout the realm. The tradition of Chinese chess, known as Xianqi, has been popular throughout North China for centuries, with players gathering in parks and tea houses to match wits over the checkered board. This strategy game shares distant ancestry with Western chess, but developed along distinctly different lines, creating a game with unique pieces and tactics. The game board represents a river dividing two opposing armies, with pieces including generals, advisors, elephants, horses, chariots, cannons, and soldiers. Xianqi has served as a metaphor for military strategy and a pastime for scholars and commoners alike. The celebration of the Lantern Festival, held on the 15th day of the first lunar month, marks the end of the Chinese New Year season with magnificent displays throughout North China. Traditional lanterns crafted from paper and bamboo are carried through the streets and displayed in homes and public spaces, creating magical scenes of dancing light. The tradition includes the consumption of yuan xiao, sweet glutinous rice balls, often filled with sesame paste or red bean paste, symbolizing reunion and the full moon. Riddles written on lanterns challenge festival goers to demonstrate their wit and learning. The ice sculptures of Harbin, though technically located in northeast China rather than North China proper, represent a related cold weather tradition that is spread throughout the northern regions. Artists use the abundant ice of the frozen Songhua River to create fantastic palaces, temples, and figures that shimmer under colored lights. The techniques developed in these extreme northern latitudes have influenced winter festivals throughout North China, where temporary ice sculptures appear in public spaces during the coldest months. The ephemeral nature of these artworks adds poignancy to their beauty. The tradition of Chinese calligraphy reached extraordinary refinement in the cultured atmosphere of Beijing and other North Chinese cities. This art form transforms writing into visual expression, with masters spending decades perfecting their control of the brush. The scholars' study traditionally contain the four treasures of the study: brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. Hours of practice were required to develop the strength and flexibility needed to create characters that seemed to dance across the page. Calligraphy served not only practical purposes, but also expressed the personality and cultivation of the writer. The imperial examination halls of Beijing could accommodate thousands of candidates during the triennial metropolitan examinations. These candidates, having already passed examinations at the provincial level, traveled to the capital seeking the highest degrees that would open doors to prestigious official positions. The examination compound contained thousands of tiny cells where candidates sat for days on end, writing essays that demonstrated their mastery of Confucian classics and their ability to compose in prescribed literary forms. Success or failure in these examinations could determine the trajectory of entire families for generations. The temple fairs that enliven the Chinese New Year season in North China combine religious observance with commercial activity and popular entertainment. Crowds gather at temples to burn incense and pray for blessings in the coming year, while vendors fill surrounding streets with stalls selling food, toys, and household goods. Traditional performances including stilt walking, lion dancing, and Yangzhe folk dancing add color and excitement to the celebrations. These fairs continue traditions that have marked the transition between years for countless generations. The craft of creating snuff bottles, tiny containers for powdered tobacco, developed into a refined art form during the Qing dynasty. These miniature vessels were made from glass, porcelain, jade, ivory, and other precious materials, with interiors sometimes painted using tiny brushes inserted through the narrow necks. Beijing craftsmen became particularly renowned for this art, creating bottles treasured by collectors worldwide. Though the habit of taking snuff has largely disappeared, the bottles remain valued for their exquisite workmanship and imaginative designs. The tradition of Beijing opera, known as Jingju, synthesized elements from various regional opera forms during the late 18th and early 19th centuries. This highly stylized performance art combines singing, speaking, acting, and acrobatic movement according to strict conventions that audiences familiar with the tradition could interpret in detail. The elaborate costumes and makeup follow precise rules, with different colors and patterns indicating character types that audience members recognized immediately. Beijing opera reached its peak of popularity during the early 20th century and remains an important cultural heritage of North China. The production of Cloisonne enamelware has been practiced in Beijing since the Yuan dynasty, with techniques refined over subsequent centuries. This decorative art involves soldering thin metal strips to a base to create compartments that are then filled with colored enamel and fired repeatedly. The finest pieces require months of meticulous work by skilled craftsmen, resulting in objects of extraordinary beauty and durability. Traditional motifs include dragons, phoenixes, lotus flowers, and intricate geometric patterns, each carrying symbolic significance. The imperial gardens scattered throughout North China represent varied approaches to landscape design that developed over centuries. The naturalistic gardens of southern China, with their emphasis on creating miniature landscapes suggestive of mountains and rivers, influenced northern garden design while adapting to different climate conditions and aesthetic preferences. Northern gardens tend to feature more formal arrangements and make greater use of architectural elements, reflecting the influence of the imperial court. The integration of buildings and gardens created unified aesthetic environments where architecture and nature complemented each other. The tradition of Chinese medicine developed sophisticated theories and practices that remain influential throughout North China and beyond. Traditional Chinese medicine views the body as a system of interconnected energies that must be kept in balance to maintain health. Practitioners use herbal remedies, acupuncture, massage, and dietary therapy to address imbalances and promote wellness. The pharmacies of North Chinese cities traditionally displayed hundreds of drawers containing dried herbs, roots, and other medicinal materials that pharmacists combined according to classical formulas and individual diagnoses. The making of bean curd, known in the West as tofu, has been practiced in China for more than 2,000 years, with North China developing distinctive preparations suited to the regional cuisine. Fresh tofu appears in countless northern dishes, from simple home cooking to elaborate banquet preparations. Dried, pressed, and fermented tofu products expand the range of textures and flavors available to cooks. The versatility of this protein-rich food made from soybeans helped sustain populations through long winters when fresh vegetables were scarce. The tradition of shadow puppetry, though found throughout China, developed distinctive regional styles in the northern provinces. Puppeteers manipulate flat figures made from translucent donkey hide behind a lit screen, bringing to life stories from history, legend, and everyday life. The figures are intricately cut and jointed to allow expressive movement, and their features are colored with transparent dyes that glow when light passes through. Evening performances in village squares and urban theaters entertain generations before the arrival of modern entertainment technologies. The fortified villages of Shanxi Province represent a remarkable architectural tradition developed in response to the threat of bandits and invaders. These settlements clustered houses within defensive walls, with narrow gates that could be closed against attackers. Some villages constructed elaborate underground tunnels connecting houses and providing refuge during emergencies. The preserved village of Zhangbai, for example, contains an underground complex dating to the Sui dynasty that extends for more than 10 kilometers beneath the surface. The tradition of ancestor worship has shaped family life throughout North China for countless generations. Tablets bearing the names of deceased ancestors occupied places of honor in family homes, receiving offerings of incense, food, and symbolic paper, money on regular occasions and annual festivals. The graves of ancestors in the countryside required periodic maintenance and ritual observance, with the Qingming festival in spring serving as the primary occasion for families to gather at ancestral graves for cleaning, offerings, and remembrance. The production of Mayanhua, or cotton padding used in traditional Chinese bedding and winter clothing, developed into an important cottage industry throughout North China. Skilled workers used specialized tools to fluff raw cotton into lightweight, insulating layers that could be quilted into garments and bed covers. The familiar sound of cotton being beaten with curved wooden paddles echoed through village streets as workers prepared materials for the cold months ahead. Modern synthetic insulation has largely replaced traditional cotton padding, but some craftspeople continue the old techniques. The cultivation of jujubes, known in English as Chinese dates, has long been associated with certain areas of North China where climate and soil conditions favor this hardy fruit tree. Fresh jujubes resemble small apples with a crisp texture and sweet flavor, while dried jujubes concentrate their sweetness and develop a chewy texture. Traditional Chinese medicine considers jujubes beneficial for the blood and digestive system. The fruits appear in both sweet and savory preparations, adding natural sweetness to dishes and beverages throughout the region. The tradition of raising carrier pigeons has deep roots in North China, where fanciers have bred birds for beauty, speed, and homing ability for centuries. Beijing has been particularly noted for its pigeon-keeping traditions, with enthusiasts attaching small whistles to their birds' tails that produce musical tones as flocks circle overhead. The sound of pigeon whistles drifting down from the sky was once characteristic of the Beijing soundscape. though it has become less common as urbanization has transformed the city. The craft of creating traditional Chinese fans involves specialized skills that differ depending on the type of fan being made. Folding fans with paper or silk mounted on bamboo ribs require precise construction to open and close smoothly. Round fans with silk stretched over rigid frames served both practical and decorative purposes. Master calligraphers and painters often decorated fans with poems and images, transforming functional objects into treasured artworks. Fans played important roles in opera performance and social rituals, with the manner of handling a fan communicating subtle messages. The tradition of cricket fighting, though controversial by modern standards, was once popular throughout North China. Enthusiasts kept male crickets in specially made containers, feeding them special diets to promote strength and aggression. Matches took place in small arenas where handlers used grass stems to stimulate their crickets into combat. Elaborate hierarchies of cricket quality developed, with championship crickets commanding high prices. The cricket keeping season coincided with autumn, when the chirping of these insects filled the evening air. The celebration of the Mid-Autumn Festival, occurring on the 15th day of the 8th lunar month, holds special significance throughout North China. This harvest festival traditionally involved gathering with family to appreciate the full moon while sharing mooncakes, dense pastries often filled with lotus seed paste or red bean paste, and containing salted egg yolks representing the moon. The round shape of mooncakes symbolizes completeness and reunion, making this festival an important time for families separated by work or study to come together. The tradition of making and flying kites has ancient roots in North China, where the flat plains and reliable winds provide ideal conditions for this pastime. Beijing and Weifang in Shandong province developed particularly strong kite-making traditions, with craftsmen creating elaborate designs featuring dragons, butterflies, centipedes, and human figures. Some traditional kites incorporate mechanisms that produce sounds as they fly, adding auditory beauty to the visual spectacle. Kite flying in spring served practical purposes as well as recreational ones, with farmers using kites to help drive away evil spirits and ensure good harvests. The production of carpets and rugs in North China developed distinctive styles influenced by both Chinese design traditions and Central Asian techniques introduced along the Silk Road. The carpets of Ningxia and Inner Mongolia feature bold geometric patterns and rich colors that reflect the aesthetic preferences of the region's diverse populations. Traditional carpet making involves knotting wool or silk threads onto a warp by hand, with skilled weavers producing intricate patterns from memory. The finest carpets require months or years of continuous work and represent significant investments of skill and labor. The tradition of seal carving, creating the stamp-like seals used to mark documents and artworks, developed into a refined art form among scholars throughout North China. These seals, typically carved from stone, but sometimes from jade, ivory, or other materials, bear characters rendered in ancient script styles that required specialized knowledge to read and create. The red paste used with seals contains cinnabar, a mineral that produces the distinctive vermilion impressions found on traditional Chinese paintings and documents. Collecting seal impressions became a scholarly pursuit in its own right. The making of fenjiang, a type of steamed cake made from mung bean flour, represents one of many distinctive snacks developed in the cities of North China. These foods, often sold by street vendors or in small shops, provided quick sustenance for workers and travelers throughout the urban landscape. Different seasons brought different specialties, with cooling treats available in summer and warming snacks appearing as temperatures dropped. The variety of small foods available in North Chinese cities impressed visitors and demonstrated the creativity of local cooks working with limited ingredients. The tradition of ice harvesting from frozen rivers and lakes sustained a pre-modern system of food preservation and cooling throughout North China. Workers cut blocks of ice during the coldest months and stored them in insulated ice houses where they could remain frozen until summer. Wealthy households and commercial establishments used this ice to preserve perishable foods and cool beverages during hot weather. The ice houses of the imperial palace stored enormous quantities of ice for use throughout the year. The celebration of the Double Ninth Festival on the 9th day of the 9th lunar month traditionally involved climbing to high places to enjoy the autumn scenery and drink chrysanthemum wine. In North China, people climbed to temple grounds, tower tops, or hilltops to take in the views and escape the potential ill fortune associated with the date according to traditional beliefs. The festival also honored elderly family members, with the climbing serving as a metaphor for ascending to longevity. Chrysanthemums, which bloom in autumn, decorated homes and appeared in food and drink. The production of jade objects has continued in North China for thousands of years, though much of the raw material must be imported from distant sources. Jade carving requires specialized tools and techniques developed over millennia, with craftsmen working slowly to shape the extremely hard stone without fracturing it. Traditional jade objects ranged from small personal ornaments to elaborate ceremonial vessels and sculptures. The stone's association with virtue and immortality made jade objects appropriate gifts for important occasions and offerings to the deceased. The tradition of Chinese gardens in North China adapted southern styles to the different climate while developing regional characteristics. Northern gardens make greater use of evergreen plants that can survive cold winters and maintain visual interest through the dormant season. The integration of heated pavilions allowed garden enjoyment even during cold weather. Rocky outcroppings and carefully placed stones created mountain scenery within limited spaces, inviting contemplation of natural forms. Water features, though requiring protection from freezing, remained important elements connecting gardens to larger cosmic patterns. The making of traditional Chinese ink from pine soot and animal glue developed into a refined craft with important centers in North China. Quality ink required lengthy processing and aging, with the finest sticks commanding high prices from discerning scholars and artists. The grinding of ink sticks on stone to produce liquid ink served as a meditative preparation for writing or painting, allowing the practitioner to focus the mind before beginning work. Different ink formulations produced variations in color and texture that knowledgeable users selected to match their artistic intentions. The tradition of storytelling in tea houses and public spaces entertained and educated generations of North Chinese before modern media provided alternative diversions. Professional storytellers developed repertoires of historical narratives, legendary tales, and contemporary stories that could be performed over multiple sessions, keeping audiences returning to hear the continuation of favorite sagas. These oral performances preserved and transmitted cultural knowledge, historical memory, and moral values through dramatic presentation. Some storytelling traditions incorporated musical accompaniment or rhythmic percussion. The celebration of the winter solstice, known as Dongjai, marks an important turning point in the traditional Chinese calendar, when days begin to lengthen after reaching their shortest point. In North China, the festival traditionally involved eating dumplings, a practice said to commemorate a legendary physician who invented the food to prevent frostbite among the poor. Families gather to make and eat dumplings together, with the activity serving as an opportunity for reunion during the dark days of winter. The festival also involved offerings to ancestors and preparations for the coming spring. The production of leather goods in North China drew on the abundant livestock of the region and developed distinctive techniques over centuries. Tanning hides required specialized knowledge and considerable time, with processes differing depending on the type of leather being produced and its intended use. Leather workers created shoes, boots, harnesses, belts, and countless other items essential for daily life. The nomadic traditions of Inner Mongolia contributed techniques for working with hides and furs that complemented the skills of Chinese craftsmen. The tradition of weaving willow branches into baskets and other containers developed throughout the riverside areas of North China, where willows grew abundantly. Basket weavers created containers of every size and shape, from tiny vessels for holding small items to large baskets for transporting agricultural products. Different weaving patterns produced varying degrees of flexibility and durability suited to specific purposes. The craft required intimate knowledge of plant materials and the manual dexterity to manipulate flexible branches into precise forms. The celebration of birthdays in traditional North China centered on the consumption of longevity noodles, whose extended length symbolized hopes for a long life. These noodles, often hand-pulled to create extra long strands, were typically served in soup and eaten without cutting to preserve their symbolic power. Birthday celebrations also involved the consumption of specially made steamed buns shaped and colored to resemble peaches, another symbol of longevity. Significant birthdays, particularly those marking completion of 60-year cycles, received more elaborate celebration. The production of preserved vegetables has been essential to survival in North China since ancient times. The short growing season and harsh winters made food preservation critical for survival, and techniques for pickling, salting, drying, and fermenting vegetables developed over millennia. Preserved cabbage in particular became a dietary staple, with families preparing enormous quantities each autumn to last through the winter months. The tangy, fermented flavor of these preserved vegetables became a defining characteristic of northern Chinese cuisine. The tradition of the night watchman, who patrolled urban streets calling out the hours and watching for fire or crime, maintained order and security in North Chinese cities before modern policing developed. These watchmen carried distinctive implements, including wooden clappers, whose sound identified their rounds and warned potential wrongdoers. The regular rhythm of their calls through the night hours provided a sense of security to sleeping residents and marked the passage of time for those awake. This tradition has now passed into history, but remains preserved in literary descriptions and dramatic performances. The making of wooden furniture in North China drew on regional traditions that differed in some respects from the more famous furniture styles of southern China. Northern furniture tends towards simpler lines and sturdier construction, suited to practical use in harsher climate conditions. The imperial workshops in Beijing produced elaborate furniture for palace use that combined influences from throughout the realm. Furniture making required extensive knowledge of wood properties and joinery techniques, with master craftsmen capable of creating objects that would last for generations without the use of nails or screws. The celebration of the Laba festival on the 8th day of the 12th lunar month traditionally involved consuming laba porridge, a thick mixture of grains, beans, nuts, and dried fruits that required lengthy preparation. This festival marked an important milestone in preparations for the Chinese New Year celebration that would follow several weeks later. Families began cleaning their homes, settling debts, and making purchases for the holiday season. The porridge itself held religious significance derived from Buddhist traditions, while also serving practical purposes as a nourishing winter food. The tradition of constructing memorial arches, known as peifeng or peilu, commemorated virtuous individuals and important events throughout North China. These elaborate structures, often built of stone, mark the entrances to temples, tombs, and significant places while honoring those whose deeds merited public recognition. The arches typically featured multiple tiers with upturned roof elements and bore inscriptions identifying those commemorated. Some arches survived for centuries, continuing to honor long-dead individuals while themselves becoming historic monuments worthy of preservation. The production of sorghum-based alcoholic beverages has been practiced in North China for centuries, with different regions developing distinctive styles. The strong, clear liquors produced from fermented sorghum provided warming refreshment during cold winters and accompanied celebrations throughout the year. Traditional production methods involved multiple stages of fermentation and distillation that could extend over months. The resulting spirits had alcohol contents far exceeding those of wine or beer, requiring moderation in consumption. The tradition of the public bathhouse provided essential services in North Chinese cities before the widespread availability of private bathing facilities. These establishments offered not only opportunities for cleanliness, but also social spaces where men gathered to relax, gossip, and conduct business. Attendants provided massage, haircuts, and other personal services. The bathhouse culture created community bonds among regular patrons who visited the same establishment for years or decades. The making of felt from the wool of sheep and other animals developed into an important craft among the pastoral peoples of Inner Mongolia. Felt production involves matting fibers together through the application of heat, moisture, and pressure rather than weaving. The resulting material provides excellent insulation and has been used for tent coverings, clothing, blankets, and countless other purposes by nomadic peoples for millennia. The techniques for making felt spread throughout North China, where the material found various applications suited to the cold climate. The tradition of the wet nurse, who breastfed infants, not her own children, played important roles in wealthy households throughout North China before the development of safe alternatives to mother's milk. Imperial children were typically raised by wet nurses rather than their biological mothers, creating bonds that sometimes proved more emotionally significant than blood relationships. The selection of wet nurses followed careful criteria intended to ensure the health and proper development of the children in their care. The celebration of the Spring Festival, known in the West as Chinese New Year, remains the most important holiday throughout North China and indeed all of China. Preparations begin weeks in advance, with families cleaning homes, purchasing new clothes, and preparing special foods. The reunion dinner on New Year's Eve brings extended families together for the most important meal of the year. The following days involve visiting relatives, exchanging gifts of money in red envelopes, and participating in community celebrations. Fireworks and firecrackers traditionally drove away evil spirits and welcomed the new year with explosive joy. The production of bean paste, made from fermented soybeans, provides essential flavoring for countless dishes throughout North China. This thick, salty paste serves both as an ingredient in cooking and as a condiment at the table. The fermentation process transforms plain soybeans into a complex flavoring agent that adds depth and richness to everything it touches. Different regions develop distinctive styles of bean paste, with variations in ingredients, fermentation methods, and aging times producing different flavor profiles. The tradition of the storytelling drum, which accompanies certain styles of narrative performance, developed distinctive regional forms throughout North China. Performers use small drums to punctuate their recitations, emphasizing dramatic moments and maintaining rhythmic interest. The combination of spoken word and percussion creates a distinctive art form that has entertained audiences for centuries. Some performers achieved celebrity status and attracted devoted followings who appreciated their interpretive skills and stylistic innovations. The making of reed mats from the abundant reeds growing in wetland areas provided materials for flooring, wall covering, and other household uses throughout North China. Reed harvesting and processing represented significant seasonal activities in communities near lakes and rivers. The finished mats offered practical benefits, including insulation from cold floors and easily cleaned surfaces. Reed crafts extended beyond simple mats to include baskets, screens, and other useful items. As we truly reach the end of our journey through North China tonight, let these images of ancient mountains and fertile plains, of mighty rivers and historic cities, of enduring traditions and remarkable innovations settle gently into your mind. From the prehistoric caves of Zhaokudian to the imperial splendor of the Forbidden City, from the endless grasslands of Inner Mongolia to the industrial cities of the modern era, North China has witnessed the full sweep of human experience. Let the knowledge of this remarkable region accompany you into peaceful sleep, where dreams might carry you across the yellow waters of the Great River or along the ancient stones of the Great Wall. Rest now, knowing that the stories of this land continue to unfold even as you sleep, as they have for countless thousands of years before, and as they will for all the generations yet to come.